And now,
it's back to Gugs Mahlangu
on 702.
It's time for a sustainability conversation. Just recently, the Cooperation Council on Africa, in partnership with the government of Botswana, hosted the US and Africa Business Summit in Gaborone. And one of the things that was looked at was this question of how do we create sustainable development with innovative financing? And so to speak about some of these issues, we're joined now by Director of Strategy and Business Development at the Foundation for Partnership Initiatives in the Niger Delta. Aline Varre joins us to speak about some of the insights from that summit. Aline, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So tell us about the panel that you were a part of, where the conversation was around driving sustainable development through innovative financing. What do we mean when we speak about innovative financing for sustainable development?
Yes. So I was part of the panel that talked about how nonprofit are a key puzzle piece in the discussion of sustainable development. And when you're looking at innovative financing, well, when you look at nonprofits, for example, nonprofits traditionally have been functioning on grants, right? And when you're talking about grants are not something that has a continuity to it. So when you say sustainable development, it's actually an oxymoron. There's nothing that's sustainable about it. There's no continuum. So being a part of the nonprofit industry, we have to look at different ways to assess our current funding streams, to assess how the programs can actually have an investable aspect to them, and to be that puzzle piece that is missing in the ESG goals in the private sector's want to do impact investment, and to be an actual partner in actually attaining those goals, because we want to bring sustainable capital, right? There needs to be a continuum of capital on the continent.
Mm-hmm. And why is this particularly important for the developing world, certainly a country like South Africa?
Well, if you're looking at, ever since I've been here in South Africa, I've had a lot of different discussions at UCT Bertha Center with Dr. Pumlani, talking about the fact that the cut and go reputation that nonprofits have, NPOs have, due to lack of funding, governance, or things of the sort. If you're looking at lack of funding, if you're going back to grants, the grants process now with the international aid organizations and governments, now all of that funding has cut ever since COVID, ever since the war. Access to it is becoming more complicated. The cut and go that NPOs deal with is going to be more of a situation now. So being able to have sustainable development is actually going to be really a non-factor, a non-existent, if we don't reassess and look at blended finance as an opportunity.
And when we speak about blended finance, what does that look like? What does that mean?
So blended finance is a concept where it's actually a very vast concept, right? Impact investment is a part of that conversation. VP, venture philanthropy. So, for example, us at a PIN Foundation, we're doing a baseline assessment, a market analysis, looking at how we could potentially build an SPV or be a vehicle in the Niger Delta for impact investors, right? There are organizations on the continent like the African Venture Philanthropy Alliance, right? Also known as AFPA, which is a Pan-African network that permits social investors, private sector, to be able to see what are the opportunities to deploy innovative ways for maximum social impact. So if AFPA is a network that is possible for the nonprofit, looking at bonds, impact bonds, looking at blended venture philanthropy funds as a way of regenerating funds and capital. And that's what's important, the continuum of capital, regenerating capital. So doing that baseline assessment to see if SPVs, so special purpose vehicles, are the answer for nonprofits, if impact bonds are the answer for nonprofits. There's a different time, and that doesn't mean remove grants, because grants is part of what what the nonprofit builds on. But blending finance, blended different types of capital is what we need to start looking to.
It also seems that one of the big things that seems to also be quite important is this idea of collaboration between nonprofits, the private sector, governments, for these kind of innovative funding models to work. So, you speak about, these kind of these blended bonds, but also it seems that there needs to be collaboration between all of the players for it to work.
Yes. So if you're looking at the ESG goals, the international ESG goals between that government has talked about, the private sector wants to have impact. But what's problematic is in these industries, in these sectors, the access to data is complicated. The nonprofit is the boots on the ground. They're in with the communities. They've been doing this for decades. They have the data, they have the resources, and they have the connections on the ground in the different sectors that the private sector and government would like to invest in. So the partnership between all three sectors is vital. One cannot do it without the other. Between the data, the communications, the impact, the funding, the capital, policy, all of that, if we want sustainability on our continent, we have got to speak one language, and we have got to make an ecosystem and not continue to make it siloed. Right now, all sectors are siloed. And if this not becomes one ecosystem, sustainability is not going to be a term we'll be able to use in the future.
And would you say that was the biggest takeout or takeaway from the discussion at the summit in Gaborone?
The biggest takeaway I'm going to say is the possibility. Right now, there is discussions being had about how all of this is possible, but key players are not aware of what's accessible to them. Key players are not aware of the possibilities that are at hand from a capital perspective, from a collaboration perspective. And the nonprofit is for sure not part of the conversation. It's starting. So I think the biggest takeaway is now that these collaborations, these opportunities, this continuum of capital is absolutely possible and is absolutely a non-negotiable, the right way forward.
Aline, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know it's quite a late start, a late evening for you. So we really appreciate you staying up to chat to us this morning.
No, I'm actually in Johannesburg, so I'm up with you.
Oh, wonderful.
This worked out just great.
I thought you'd gone back to, I know you were planning on traveling, so I'm glad we didn't keep you up.
No, you didn't. I travel this evening, so this worked out perfectly. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for your time. Of course, looking at that sustainability, driving sustainability development through innovative financing, joined by the Director of Strategy and Business Development at the Foundation for Partnership Initiatives in the Niger Delta, Aline Varre, joining us this morning.